Welcome to this podcast. Is making me thirsty, the number one destination for Seinfeld fans. This episode 167. Today's guest is a veteran writer and actor of stage and screen. He has performed in several Broadway shows, including The Lion King. He's the author of the popular six-book series, The Twits Chronicles. He's an award-winning playwright. You know him from The Good Wife, Law and Order, Baby Talk. And of course, he played Jerry's friend Stan in the season 5 Seinfeld episode, The Bris. Please welcome Tom Robbins. Tom, thanks for joining.
It's my pleasure to be here. I don't know how you guys found me, but here I am. I can't believe it took you this many episodes to get to me.
Well, we save all the good ones, Tom, and you were certainly one of those. So take us back. Geez, Tom, it's been 30 years. October of 93, one of the greatest episodes in Seinfeld lore aired, The Bris. You obviously played Stan, Jerry's friend, like Tony mentioned there. Tell us a little bit about how the role came about. Would love to hear if there was an audition process. How'd you get the role?
I wish I had an exciting story to tell you about how I got the role. It literally, I got a call from my agent. They said, you got an audition. They sent me the sides. I went to whatever studio the audition was in. I had one audition, went through it one time, and a couple of days later they called and said, okay, you got the part. It was it was completely anticlimactic.
So this was 93. Was Jerry in the room? Larry? What do you remember about who was there?
No one was in the room. They put me on tape. Yeah, they put me on tape. There was no one there but the casting director. And that was it. I told you it was not an interesting story.
Well, it is. What's interesting to me about the story, actually, is that we were talking before you came on that, I mean, you're perfect for this role. Like you were the role. Like you everything about like New York City, the Bris, the whole thing. I don't know. You fit the role so perfectly. And maybe they saw that right away too. And they just were like, this is it. This is the guy. So. We got him. Yeah. I mean, we were talking about that earlier, how it's like we couldn't see anyone else play that role. So you land the role pretty, it sounds like pretty quickly there. And then, you get to set. This is season 5, so they're pretty much, firing on all cylinders at this point. They might not be the number one show, but they're definitely tops. If they're not number one at this point, they're hitting that level. And this is a Larry Charles written episode, which is obviously always a big one. What was your sense from all of that kind of going in? Was it that big of a deal in your head, or was it just another TV show? Had you been trying for Seinfeld? Did you know this is going to be a bigger role than just any other sitcom? Was any of that kind of going on at all?
I had not been trying for Seinfeld. I was not really in the kind of position in my career where I could try for anything. I was just looking for work. So yeah, I was excited to have the part, especially because Jason Alexander was someone I knew. We had done my first Broadway show together, which was Jerome Robbins' Broadway. And I was in the show, but I also covered Jason. And when Jason shot the Seinfeld pilot, I went on for him for those 2 weeks. So I was looking forward to seeing someone that I knew. And that was fun. And I loved the show. And by a strange coincidence, I was also trying to write sitcom script at the time. And the first sample script I wrote was a Seinfeld episode. So, I had a lot going on, but I really enjoyed it. I was excited to go.
What can you tell us about that script at all? Do you remember anything you had in there? Like,
absolutely. I mean, it's been a long time since I've read it, but I mean, it was, the fun thing about it was the way the show was. It was about nothing, so you could just have fun with the characters. So you just come up with any crazy ideas and just follow them. And I think it started off with George accidentally dropping his toothbrush in the toilet at Jerry's apartment and realizing he could never use it again because it was like being kosher. Once a toothbrush has touched something trafe, it can never be used again. So they had to go to the drugstore and look for a new toothbrush for George. And Elaine, the B story was Elaine had a mouse in her apartment, so she needed to find some way to get rid of her mouse. And I just, it was just fun. It was fun to write.
Yeah, and you nailed it. It's a show about nothing yet. It's kind of a show about everything, about friendship, and I think the episode you were in really encompassed that. So And I gotta say, you were in a ton of scenes for a guest star. I mean,
Yeah.
I count here like 5 major scenes you were in. I mean, the show opens and boom, right? You're there, right? Talking about describing the birth and the placenta comes flying out. I mean,
Yeah.
Larry Charles gave you a lot in this episode, and then obviously the sucking away with Myra there, and Jerry was uncomfortable. What do you remember about? I guess that first scene where everyone's introduced to Stan right at the hospital.
Yeah. Again, it's interesting. The writing did change a little bit, but I mean, basically, I showed up and I think we shot it in order. We started with that first scene and we went through it a couple of times and they shot it and they said, okay, that's good. And it wasn't like there wasn't a lot of direction. There weren't a lot of notes. We just kind of did it and moved on, which, I was having fun. One thing that did change was in the very first version of the script, Jerry talks about how he and I are on a softball team together, and he's the pitcher and I'm the catcher, and he accuses me of being a relationship jumper because I think that because I'm the catcher and he's the pitcher, we have a special relationship, and it annoys him that I'm trying to jump up the relationship. But that all got cut, I was very disappointed about. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that explains a lot because we've always thought that about this episode. Like, well, who is Stan to ask Jerry to be the guy? We always wondered that. It's one of the things we always wondered if they would have left that in. I mean, he mentions it very briefly, but not enough. To your point, it sounds like they cut a lot of it out, and that's interesting because
it explains a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting.
This episode for me was about longing and regret. Because I, like every other guest star that comes on the show, I'm sure I longed for my character to recur. And when things like that got rewritten, I thought, it's not going to happen. That's the regret part. Because you have so much fun, but it lasts a week and you leave and you think, oh, I wish I could come back. So I did have some hopes when I saw the first script. I thought, oh, they're good friends. So who knows?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because they do, and the baby stuff. Maybe maybe they go visit the baby or something. As Chris mentioned, this is a top episode for many Seinfeld fans, and we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Charles Levin, who played the Moyle. His entrance scene is one of those that everyone kind of talks about. What was that like? I mean, I love scenes like Tris mentioned. There's so much going on. There's everyone in the apartment. You got all 4 main characters plus all these guest stars. He comes barging in. I mean, that must have been a fun scene tell us about kind of watching that kind of unfold.
Absolutely. He was great. He was great. And he had the energy from the get-go and he really went for it. It was hilarious and yet it was real and it was grounded and he was wonderful and everybody loved his performance. But I have an interesting story to tell you, which was that he was not the original actor cast in that role. I won't tell you the other actor's name. He was someone who had worked a lot and was very well respected. And when I showed up for the first day, he was playing the Moyle. And he was doing his actor's work. He was, finding his beats and he was grounding himself, but he wasn't bringing the funny. And I think he was told that they needed to see what he was going to do to make the scene funny because we only had 5 days. And he just was coming along too slowly. And by the middle of day 2, he was gone. And Charles Levin was there, who was fantastic.
Wow. Now we've heard that, and we've heard, guest stars, concern that they can get fired during the week, and clearly,
absolutely,
that's unbelievable. And another little rumor we heard is that Jason Alexander was upset at the portrayal of the Moyle and the characterization, and supposedly him and Larry David fought that week. Is any truth to that?
I don't really know the story of that. I know that Jason thought that the episode was a little extreme, and he, in his own mind, he thought that by the end of the week they would end up pulling it back a little bit, which I'm not sure that they did. But in the long run, I think it turned out to be a terrific episode, as you say. But I think he did have some misgivings about it in the early part of the week.
Yeah, as rumor as it goes, Larry David supposedly did soften, if you will, the portrayal of the Moyle, so to appease Alexander supposedly. So I think it all worked out.
But I never saw any friction between them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like a close knit family. I think they nitpick over little things like that. So speaking of Larry, we all know Larry David now. And you mentioned the first scene. There wasn't much direction. Was the presence of Larry on set? What do you remember about him, if anything, some 30 years ago?
I definitely remember him, and I remember him being there. He was actually rather low key. He talked quietly, and you definitely felt his presence. I didn't really get much of a chance to interact with him until the whole thing was over. And then as I was leaving, I happened to walk by him and Jerry, and he thanked me. And he said, "That was very professional," which for an actor is like, oh, that's nice, but it's not what you want to hear. But he was really a very nice person.
I mean, interestingly enough, we talked to so many guest stars. You're not all of them had the pleasure. You were in a scene with everyone, right? Julia, Michael Richards, Jason, who you mentioned, you knew already, and obviously Jerry. I mean, you were in a lot of scenes with all of them, which doesn't happen very often. So you already mentioned your kind of relationship with Jason that prior to kind of coming to the set, so that probably helped a little bit with breaking the ice and things like that, I would imagine. But what was it? I mean, Michael Richards has a heck of an episode in this too, as well, with the jumping around, with the baby and everything else, and the Godfather stuff at the end. I mean, he must have been a blast too. Can you give us something on Michael Richards, maybe working with him? What was that like? We've heard some pretty good stories.
He was great, and he was very funny. But there was nothing in that episode or that experience that was crazy about him. He was just a very talented comic actor who knew how to work and was inventive and coming up with stuff. But no, I don't have any stories really about him. I liked him and it was fun to work with him. But the whole episode went really very smoothly, and I mean, everyone was terrific, and I wish I had more stories of crazy things happening and stuff going wrong, but it really wasn't like that.
Well, being in New York for the last 30 years, I'm sure you got tons of stories, Tom. But how does a guy, you grew up in Canton, Ohio, right? Home of the Football Hall of Fame, of course.
Right.
How does a guy from Canton, Ohio, end up on the set of the #1 TV show in the world? Tell us a little bit about how that came about, the whole, acting bug, if you will.
Yeah. Well, it's a typical story of a kid in the Midwest that starts doing High School Musicals and gets the bug. And I went off to college not intending to be an actor, but I went to a school that really didn't have much of an acting department, but it was upstate New York. And I had a friend in New York from Canton that was going to Juilliard. And she said, "Why don't you come in and you can sleep on my couch and audition?" So I did, without telling my parents, because they would have been horrified. And when the acceptance letter came to my house, my parents called me, my mother in tears, wondering what the hell I was doing. And I told them I really wanted to pursue it. She proceeded to call the school and ask them to rescind my acceptance. And they said, no, we really can't do that. And I ended up going to Juilliard for 4 years. And, I acted in New York pretty consistently. And then I thought, out of New York, I got cast in Baby Talk. I was a series regular on Baby Talk. So I was out in LA for a while, and we were just about to have a baby. And I thought, if we're going to try LA, this is the time, because I just did a series. So we moved out there for almost 3 years. And that was the time that I got cast in Seinfeld. And then we decided maybe New York was a better place for us. We moved back here, and we haven't gone back since.
Wow, that's unbelievable. And Baby Talk, if I recall, that's Clooney, right?
That was George Clooney for about the first half of it, until he decided that there were other things he wanted to do, and he managed to get himself out of there and headed off to greener pastures.
little facts of life, little baby talk, little ER, and then
he's done all right. I was worried about him. I thought, geez, you're really burning your bridges, but he did all right.
He did all right. So it's funny. Back to Seinfeld, like Tony mentioned. I mean, and again, we chronicle this show. We analyze it a little more than others. So but most guest stars are kind of paired with one person. You're with, for the majority of this, you're with all four, which is like incredibly rare. I mean, you witnessed the guy jumping from the. Hey, Leah, I'm always curious about that. How, did they? What did they like for you guys to do that motion by the window? Do you remember like a prop?
They didn't do anything. It's just we all felt our heads moving, and it's like a mirror exercise. We just all did it at the same time. I just decided at the start that, they were all the stars and I was like the nobody, but I thought I'm just going to pretend that we're all the same and that we're all actors in a scene. And so I just kind of jumped in, and when we were doing it and it was time to run to the window, I just ran to the window with them. And when it's time to look up, I just sensed where their heads were going. And when it's time to look down, we all sensed when we were looking down, and it just worked. I think that's why he said it was very professional.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you said and we've heard this from other guest stars. I mean, you mentioned I'm there, to not serve them, but they're the stars. They're there every week. I'm there for this 1 week to do my job and do it well and make sure that I get the laughs I need and that sort of thing. But from what we've heard from other guest stars is, this might not be the case on every other set, but they're very welcoming. They don't act like the stars, right? From what we understand, there's a lot of unselfishness, and especially with Jerry. I mean, Jerry's running the show with Larry and also acting, right? So we didn't really talk about him a lot, but from your perspective, maybe not even through direct interaction, but just from being on the set, him handling that responsibility, just being in both places. I mean, you had to have at least picked up on it and maybe even learned a few things. Watched it.
He was great. And he's really a very nice person. And because I knew Jason, as you said, he did sort of help clear the way and help me fit in. And we'd all sit around and, Jason would bring me into the conversation and ask me questions about things. And I remember Jerry was working on the stand-up that he's doing at the end of the show, and he couldn't come up with a joke. And he was asking Jason, if he had any ideas. And Jason said, Tom, you're good at this. Do you got any ideas about this? And of course, I desperately tried to come up with something, and I was completely blank. But that really helped. It really broke the ice. And it was nice. But he was great. That's one of the reasons I really wanted to come back, because I enjoyed being there with those people so much.
Yeah, and Tony mentioned the baby, because they get honestly the baby in later episodes. It could have made sense to have you and Myra, back on board. But like I said, you were such a presence in this episode. Well, actually, they could have brought you back, Tom, for the the finale was all about how they wronged people. I mean, they almost cut your son's, right?
Yeah,
your son Steven.
Don't think it didn't occur to me as I watched the final episode.
That would have been something. Everybody remembers Stan and Myra for sure. And then another big scene. And here's the thing about Seinfeld, especially these earlier years. What we love is them out of the apartment, whether it's a hospital or an airport. It's just, I don't know. It's less about New York. It's just more about funny, and I think it could be more relatable in that sense. But you you breaking up that fight between the Moyle and Jerry, and in the hallway there. What do you remember about that scene? Again, it sounds like there wasn't too much directing going on, and people kind of just got their cues, and it seemed like a pretty simplified week, if you will. Is that normal?
I don't know if that's normal with that show. I mean, it did go really smoothly. I mean, they basically said, here, you stand here, you stand here, and you stand here. And we just played the scene. And my recollection is that, we did most of the scenes a couple of two, 3 times, and they were happy with it, and we'd move on. That scene was really no different. They blocked it once, and we did it a couple of times, and they seemed to be happy with it. So off we went.
So And you mentioned this earlier, which I still can't believe they got rid of the original Moyle 2 days in. They got 11. Like, why were you and Myra and was it Jeannie Elias? Like, were you like, what's going on here? I mean, they just
Yeah.
11 came in and just like didn't skip a beat. And
Yeah, oh yeah, he was great. But
so you didn't. It was just 5 days. There was no like extension or
no,
anything.
no extra time. No, he had to pick it up in a hurry, and he did. He just showed up, and he was ready to go, and he just was 100% right from the start.
Yeah, and it sounded like, and you mentioned that you tried to write. You were trying to write sitcoms. You did you wrote a Seinfeld bit, the whole thing. What did you? I mean, you sound like you were a fan of the show. Was there?
Sure.
When you heard you got the gig, what kind of preparation, or like, did you go back and watch old episodes, or I'd love to just hear on like how you approach this, because you're a theater guy, right? And obviously, I know there's a lot of preparation that goes into everything you do, and clearly that showed on set with you as Stan. But this was kind of a different beast, right? It's #1 hit show. What kind of preparation does a trained actor do in a situation like this?
Well, the fact that it's the #1 show doesn't really change what you do. It's just more fun and more exciting to be on it. But I mean, TV is different from theater, and as I'm sure a lot of your guests have said, obviously you have to take the time to memorize your lines and know the scenes and understand sort of what your job is, in the scenes, what you're trying to accomplish and what you need to give the other actors. And in TV, unlike theater, it's not so much about creating a character as becoming the character as you are the character. So it's about, being comfortable enough to be relaxed and natural and listen and to the other actors and really talk to them and be present for them. And that's something that really doesn't happen until you're on the set. So there was actually not that much preparation in terms of like trying to create a character. It was really like learn your lines, understand what the scenes are, show up and just be present for the other actors. Give them what they need.
I mean, you did it to a T. I mean, it was. I mentioned at the top, you were perfect for that role. I don't know how to actually explain it. It's like we all know that guy and that Stan. I don't know. I just can't really explain it, but you just had that perfect mannerisms and everything. And speaking of creating characters, and you mentioned earlier you wrote, that Seinfeld spec strip, and we know that you've written plays. But tell us more about the book series, Twits Chronicles. I mean, we're kind of interested in just hearing a little bit about that. Yeah.
I started writing these during the pandemic, and I just started. I started doing it for fun with some friends. We started writing like books together, where we'd each write the first chapter of a book and then take turns finishing it. And I wrote the first chapter of a book, and it was a mashup of a writer named P.G. Wodehouse, an English writer who wrote like drawing room comedies from around the 1920s, and steampunk. And if you know who Jeeves and Wooster are, Jeeves is like the butler that always has the answer. That was the inspiration for the website Ask Jeeves, if you remember what that was.
Yeah, and actually Jerry Seinfeld has a joke about that. Jeeves, you name a butler Jeeves, whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, I wrote like one book, and everybody seemed to like it, so I kept going, and I've now written 6. 7 is ready to go, and I'm about 3/4 of the way through book 8. And I've been publishing on Amazon. You can find them there on Amazon under Twits, or you can go to my website, twitschronicles.com or tomallenrobbins.com. They're comedies. They're a lot of fun. They're short. They're quick read. And I'm having a ball writing them, although it's hard to find time. I'm in a show now. I'm in the Neil Diamond musical, Beautiful Noise on Broadway. So I write when I can find the time, and I got my 8 times a week job.
Wow. Good for you.
Thanks.
So that's awesome. You're a New York guy, Broadway.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know sitcoms really aren't sitcoms anymore, if you will, right? It's not like the 90s, but ever that itch to get back into that, or maybe Larry David will give you a call, do a little Curb?
That would be fine. listen, doing TV is fun and it's fast and they pay you well. And I would be more than happy to do any of that stuff that comes along. But I've spent so much of my life in New York doing theater that that part of my career, I haven't really pursued it for, like I say, almost 30 years. So if someone were to offer me something fun, happy, but meanwhile, I've been working on Broadway pretty steadily. This is my 9th Broadway show. And, I love it. So that's where my head is at right now.
Yeah, Tom, I saw you at the original Lion King, some whatever it was 25.
It's been a while.
Years ago. What I should know this. Did the movie come first or the play?
Yeah, the movie came first. It was a while before they decided to do the play. They couldn't figure out if it was going to work or not, and they were very smart to hire Julie Taymor. And I was in the first workshop that she did, where she built a bunch of the puppets and she made models of all the costumes. She built models of the sets and drew like beautiful pictures of the scenery. And she hired a terrific cast. And we did a reading of the musical for the Disney executives at that time, just to prove that it could be done. And that's when they decided to take it to Broadway. And so I was in all the workshops right through till we opened in New York.
Wow. Yeah, it was a spectacle. Unbelievable. Yeah. And what's funny is another Seinfeld alum actually played Pumbaa in the cartoon, Ernie Sabella.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Ernie's great. So,
if you remember him, he was with Jerry 2 years earlier on the subway.
He was the naked guy on the subway.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You know your Seinfeld, Tom.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this. We always ask the guest stars, the rap party. Were you invited to the season 5 rap party? What do you remember?
Actually, we had a little party after the episode that I did, but I don't remember being invited to a rap party at the end of the season. Did they do that every season, and was I left out? Now my feelings are hurt, and it's 30 years later.
What are we doing?
What are you doing to me?
Well, hey, you had a party right after the Bris. I think that's just as good.
I mean, your whole episode was a party atmosphere. In my opinion. It just seemed like it was so much fun between, like we talked about, Levin and Kramer jumping off the couch, and I don't know, there's so much going on.
It was fun.
I mean, you fit in so perfectly, like you said. I mean, it's an episode for the ages. And, Larry Charles, yes, it's a little bit dark. Yeah, there was suicide. There's a crazy Moyle. I mean, things are going nuts here. But in the end, it's funny. And, you had a lot to do with that.
The pig man, it turns out to be a crazy little mental patient. Yeah.
Did they do anything with the pig man that never got on camera?
No.
Do you remember? No. Okay.
No, there was no makeup. I think, did they even show
No, they do it quickly, but they don't actually show it. That's what I was wondering.
Like the back of somebody running down a hall or something.
I was curious if they attempted and it just got cut, but it sounds like no.
No, I don't think so. I don't think they ever intended to do any crazy makeup or anything.
I can just imagine you getting that script, Pigman, placenta comes flying out. You must have been like, oh man, what am I getting into here? Right?
No, I thought, this is great. It's
like nothing else on TV, right?
Yeah, the crazier the better. Bring it on.
Nothing like a Larry Charles episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember? I mean, Larry Charles, again, he left after season 5, and for our money, I don't know, season 5, they could have ended the show there. In our opinion, I think it was just at its peak, and it kind of, for what it's worth, Tom Sharonis was your director. Larry Charles actually wrote this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Were the writers involved much? Was Larry Charles?
Larry Charles was around. I remember him. He's a striking looking man.
Yeah, the beard.
With the beard and everything. And Jason told me he was one of the top writers. So yeah, I noticed when he was around.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned Jason a few times. Are you still in touch with him? Or I know he's got a play in New York right now, actually.
Yeah. No, we sort of got out of touch because he was in LA and I was here, and I haven't talked to him in a good while. But he's a wonderful guy.
Yeah, and that's what we hear. And I think the show is it's a testament to actors valuing actors, and I think those guys did that. And obviously, you're a testament to that. So, Tom, can't thank you enough. I mean, the Bris, what an episode! And let's be honest, you stole the show there in 5 huge scenes. It was incredible job by you. Every time we watch it, we laugh. So can't thank you enough. How long is the Neil Diamond show running? Just for
we've been running almost a year now, and we'll keep going as long as people will come to see it, and it's going very well. We're selling well. The audiences are loving it.
That's awesome.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. We'll post everything about the show and obviously your book, The Twits Chronicles.
Great. Appreciate it.
Best of luck to everything, Tom. Thanks so much.
This has been a lot of fun. Thank you guys for asking me.
Thank you.
All right.
Cheers.